Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another edition of our webinar series, Inside Immigration. Today, we're joined by panelists at Green and Spiegel, Cristina, Guida, and Michael Hughes. Please feel free to ask any questions via the pop-up text bar on the right side of your screen, and we will do our very best to address them all at the end. If the panelists do not get to your question, you can contact them through the information provided on the screen now. And with that being said, I will hand things over to our panelists.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Cristina Guida, and I'm joined here by Michael Hughes. So we're going to take you through some of the changes that have happened since our last update, so through February. And as we mentioned, any questions that come through, we will answer them at the end of our session. So to start things off, we have some great updates with respect to work permits for dependents. On January 30th, IRCC announced changes to the eligibility for work permits for spouses, common law partners, dependent children, and grandchildren of work permit holders, so for the principal applicants. So what these changes mean is that now the restrictions that were in place prior to these changes were that work permits were limited to people who were in high skilled positions, so tier 0, 1, 2, 3. And now they've opened up eligibility to people basically for principal applicants anywhere from tier 0 to 5. So what that means is that eligible dependents, so that's again spouses, common law partners, dependent children, and grandchildren, are now eligible to get work permits. So what that means is, you know, the classic example that we typically have is that we have a principal applicant who's coming in with his family. You know, he has teenage children, and the children want to have part-time work, or they want to work over the summer holiday. So prior to these changes, they weren't able to do that, and now we can gladly say that they can. So it's a great update for workers in Canada, because that means we can open things up, and it's not limited to just, you know, high skilled positions. It's eligible for lower skilled positions. The only caveat that I do have to say is that this is not open for seasonal agricultural workers or agricultural stream work permit holders or low wage stream work permit holders under the temporary foreign worker program. Those still are restricted and they're not eligible for these open work permits, but really it's free, you know, it's free reign, I suppose we could say, for all other applicants. So as I said, this really makes things a lot easier. It opens up work opportunities for the family, and it allows, you know, us to deal with some of the labor shortages that we're experiencing here in Canada. So again, for any principal applicant holders, so let's say that's someone coming here on a closed work permit, or even postgraduate work permit holders. If the principal applicant has a work permit, their qualifying dependent family members are now eligible for work permits. So then I'll pass things off to Michael to talk a bit about LMIA and compliance updates.
Thanks, Cristina. So I'm going to talk about some labor market impact assessment updates as well as employer compliance updates. First, on the LMIA front, we're going to be seeing a fairly significant change with respect to how employers apply for labor market impact assessments in the near future. So as of April 3rd of this year, all LMIA applications will need to be submitted online in the LMIA online portal. So this is it's a new portal. It's been in use for some time now, but its use is becoming mandatory as of April of this year. And until that point, Service Canada will still accept LMIA applications submitted by paper or by email. But after April 3rd, it will be mandatory to use the LMIA online application portal. So it's important to note that this portal is linked to the Government of Canada's Job Bank platform. Anyone who's applied for an LMIA in the past will know that Job Bank has always been a big part of an LMIA application, especially when advertising is required. But moving forward, when using the online portal to apply for an LMIA, it will be linked to the employer's job bank account. So employers that don't have a job bank account will need to activate one and open one in order to apply for LMIAs moving forward. And in order to be able to set up a job bank account, there must be an employer contact that has a social insurance number in Canada. So what we're thinking is this may pose problems for some employers who don't have HR or global mobility personnel in Canada, because there won't be the ability to open a job bank account. There will need to be someone who has signing authority over LMIA applications who is in Canada or who otherwise has a SIN and is able to open a job bank account. So in practice, this LMIA online portal is meant to streamline the processing of applications as Service Canada moves away from paper-based applications with traditional application forms. On the employer compliance side, over the past couple of months, we've seen a significant uptick in the number of employer compliance inspections that are being conducted by Immigration and Service Canada. So throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a relative lull in the number of inspections that were being conducted, and those that were really focused on inspecting employers' obligations related to COVID-19. So anything to do with quarantine or self-isolation that was required from foreign workers. But the inspections that we're now seeing are more traditional in the sense that the government is inspecting standard conditions. So among others, if the proper wages and benefits are being provided to foreign workers, if the business is actively engaged in business, things like that. There's also been a focus in these latest inspections on inspecting new employer compliance obligations that resulted from the regulatory amendments to the immigration regulations last fall. So specifically, we're seeing immigration ask quite frequently if employers have provided information to foreign workers about their rights in Canada, and if an employment contract has been provided to the foreign worker before they started work in Canada. So if you're looking for more information on the regulatory changes that occurred September 26th of last year, we have quite a few resources and blog posts on the Green and Spiegel website, so I would encourage you to review those. Next, we're going to transition away from the temporary side of things and talk more about some updates to permanent residents. So I'll start first by talking about some recent updates to the caregiver pathways for permanent residents. So these updates impact anyone who's working in Canada as a caregiver and is looking to apply for permanent residence. So earlier this month, IRCC announced an important program change that makes it easier for those working as caregivers to qualify for permanent residence. The current pilot programs that provide a pathway to PR for caregivers there's two, the Home Child Care Provider Pilot and the Home Support Worker Pilot. So there are different pilots based on who is receiving care. One's for children and one is for adults who require care. And under these two pilots, to qualify for permanent residence, caregivers must meet specific language requirements, education requirements, and have or soon be able to obtain 2 years of qualifying work experience in Canada as a caregiver. Now, the update comes April 30th of this year, and with this update, applicants will now only need 1 year of Canadian work experience as a caregiver to qualify for these programs. So a reduction from the 24 months previous to 12 months now. So this is a great update, which will make it easier for caregivers to qualify for PR under these two pathways. And really it's meant to improve IRCC's processing time of applications, as processing of these files can be quite lengthy. And it's also important to note that this update will apply retroactively to all applicants who have already applied for permanent residence under one of these two streams. and have an application that's in process. So I'll pass things over to Cristina again to chat about some other PR updates.
Thank you, Michael. So other positive news from IRCC that was recently announced was that on January 20th, IRCC is extending and expanding the permanent residence pilot program for out-of-status construction workers and their family members. So essentially the program is going to be doubling its scope to 1,000 out-of-status construction workers in the GTA. So as a reminder, the GTA includes the City of Toronto, the Durham region, Halton region, Peel region, and York region. So really what we're seeing is the government understanding that the construction industry faces significant labor shortages, and this program acknowledges the important role that construction workers have in building and growing our communities and our economy. And allowing out-of-status construction workers an opportunity to apply for permanent residence also allows them added protections that they don't necessarily have right now if they are working without proper authorization. So it allows them to take advantage of employment rights and workplace regulations, etc. So reducing their vulnerability, which we know people who are without status and working in this industry often face. So to be eligible, what we're seeing that's different from in years past is we're having the Canadian Labour Congress, CLC, involved in the vetting process. So applicants will need the support of the CLC. So what happens is the applicant will send all of their information to CLC, and CLC will basically endorse them or support them and make sure that the applicant legally entered Canada as a temporary resident, and they will determine if the applicant has 3 years of full-time work experience in the past 5 years in the construction industry in the GTA. Obviously, the applicant will have to be currently in Canada or working in Canada without status. The applicant also has to prove that they have family living in Canada who's either a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, or has a spouse or common law partner or child in Canada. And the applicant has to not be inadmissible to Canada for any other reasons due to, let's say, medical inadmissibility or criminal inadmissibility. So essentially how it works is the applicant will go to the CLC, who will confirm their work experience. So they have those 3 years of full-time work experience in the last 5 years. They will provide a letter of support, and then the applicant will submit everything to the federal government, who will then process the application for permanent residency as it typically does. So again, this program is opening it up to 1,000 people. So that means there is a cap. So the program will be open up until January 2nd of 2024, or until the 1,000 principal applicants have been granted permanent residency, whichever comes first. So if there is anybody out there that is, in the construction industry and is not, currently working with authorization and would fit this criteria, we encourage you to reach out, and we're happy to do an eligibility assessment and help guide you through this process. And again, it's 1,000 spots. We wish there would be a bit more because we know there's a huge need in the industry, but it's a positive update in terms of the government's recognition, and hopefully they'll continue to expand the program in the years to come. So we encourage everyone to take advantage of it while it's still there. And then in terms of moving on to other permanent residence categories in the express entry system, we've seen, I guess, since the last time we've met, and specifically in February, we've seen 3 draws in the express entry system. We've seen 2 under the P&P, and then we saw 1 under the federal skilled worker category, which was interesting. So it was targeted specifically to federal skilled workers, and invites were sent to anyone with a score of 489 and above. So we saw that as a targeted draw. We haven't seen that in a while. Typically, we see any category or CEC. So knowing that they focus on the federal skilled workers is an interesting trend. We're hoping to see a few more draws in the express entry system in the CEC and FSW in the coming weeks. Hopefully we have one tomorrow, since we haven't had one. So usually it happens on Thursdays, so fingers crossed that we do it. And again, you know, we encourage everybody to, if you meet the eligibility requirements for any of the programs, so federal skilled workers, CEC, federal skilled trades, we encourage you to create a profile. Again, there's no guarantees that you will be selected, but knowing the trends and knowing that anything could happen in immigration, and IRCC decides, you know, what they want to do based on the trends and the numbers that they're looking to target, we encourage everyone to create a profile. If you'd like to discuss your options further, do an eligibility assessment, feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to do that for you. And then just in terms of processing times, that's always, you know, an ongoing issue with IRCC. In some respects, we are seeing movement. So, you know, India being the prime example, we did see a huge backlog as we were working through COVID and the closures and the back end of things. So we are seeing things going back to, you know, faster processing, and the online posted dates are typically at par with what IRCC is doing. So that's a positive note. Inside of Canada, change of conditions still remain at about 161 days. So processing within Canada still has, you know, a bit of room for improvement, but I mean, we do what we can. You know, as I spoke about before about the changes with the dependent work permits, I mean, it's a positive change, which means, you know, a lot of students, you know, and high school students might want to start work in the summer. The only challenge we see with that is if they want to do a change of conditions within Canada, they are facing those 161 days of processing times. So that's just something else to be mindful of. But we will remain positive and we will focus on the positive trends that we've been seeing recently. So let's just hope it gets better from here. That's all from my end, and Michael will finish us off with some updates with Turkey and Syria.
Yeah, thanks, Cristina. Just finally, we wanted at Green and Spiegel to offer our condolences to all those who have been affected by the earthquakes recently in Turkey and Syria, and just to remind everybody that we are providing free consultations to anybody who has been affected, and that Green and Spiegel can offer services in Turkish. So that's it in terms of immigration updates for February. There's no questions, feel free to email Cristina or myself. We're happy to assist, and we're happy to answer any questions now if there are any.
I think that's all. I don't see any questions, but thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. And a special thanks to Cristina and Michael for sharing their expert knowledge. If you would like to discuss today's topics in more detail, please reach out to book a consultation, and their details can be found on the screen now. I encourage everyone to sign up for our alerts and follow us on social media to keep up to date with the latest developments inside Canadian immigration. Thanks again, and have a good day.